Hello and welcome to Hump Day. Today I want to talk to you about shortcuts in training, and in particular about using certain bits of equipment or tack as a shortcut to training. Focusing today on nose bands. And I know that this week we've been talking a little bit about other types of shortcuts to training, such as tying the horse to the tree of knowledge to teach its patience. And that's something that's fairly common, but something that's really common and across all sorts of disciplines is the use of nose bands, and rather tight nose bands as well. And I know all of you Americans, the Western riders, will be saying, oh, I don't use a nose band. I know, but don't worry, we're going to talk about something that you do another time. Today we're going to talk about nose bands. What was really interesting, because nose bands have been the subject of quite a bit of research, recent research. And what was really interesting was a woman by the name of Orla Doherty in the UK who did a study, and it came out just after that one that that I was on with the nose bands, and we found that they cause stress in horses. So it came out just after that, and she actually went around different horse events and measured how tightly people are wearing their nose bands, because it's very easy to say, oh, I don't over tighten my nose bands. I always have two fingers, space between the nasal plane and the nose band. So she went around and measured them, and it was very interesting. She went to dressage and eventing competitions, and I think probably showing competitions as well. I'm not really sure, but she had a huge number of horses, 750 horses, I think it was, and she found that a mere 7% of those were fitted with the regulation two fingers, which is under the bridge of the nose, 2 fingers space or more, 7%. And she found actually that the eventers had tighter nose bands than the dressage riders, which is also really interesting. So I think what we need to work out first is what we're trying to hide. What is it we're shortcutting when we clamp a horse's mouth closed like that? And for dressage, we're trying to stop the horse from opening its mouth, because in dressage, a horse with an open mouth loses marks, because that's a sign of resistance. So the horse, by opening its mouth, is resisting the contact, and so therefore we lose marks if the horse opens its mouth. So they clamp the mouth closed, they hide that response in the horse, and they therefore will get more marks in their test. For the eventers, it's less clear, because nobody cares if your horse opens its mouth in the cross country. So it is much less clear. So we have to assume then that they're getting a benefit from having the horse's jaw clamp closed. And I think that has to be a pain-related benefit. We say a lot, the horse can only think of one thing at a time. If that thing is pain, that will be the thing on its mind. So you've got that focus then. Okay, so you're probably eradicating a lot of other things that the horse might be thinking about. Also, by clamping the mouth closed and preventing the horse from getting away from that pressure, opening its mouth, you make the bit then work even harder. So the pressure that you do have in your reins is going to be felt even more so by the horse, because he can't move away from that pressure. And so it will make the horse more sensitive, I would imagine, to the rein. So you can inflict more discomfort, or let's just call it pain, on the horse by picking up the same amount of pressure with a tight noseband than you could with a loose noseband or a properly fitted noseband. So that's basically what we're doing. I think we need to remember that we are training with pain. And Felicity's just said a common theme in eventing is to assist in steering. Never understood that logic. No, I'm afraid you've lost me there. So this is perhaps at the higher level. Some of you are going to be just hacking your horses out, or just riding in a riding school, or you just ride your horse around the property and you might not even be using a noseband. But let's say you are. And your horse, or let's say you're breaking your horse in and your horse opens its mouth when you pick up pressure on the rein. Now, I want to see that. I want to know that my horse doesn't like that. Now, especially if I'm starting the horse under saddle. And I started hundreds of horses under saddle, and I can guarantee that when you first start to pick up pressure on the rein, that they will open their mouth, because you would, wouldn't you, really? If somebody put a bit in your mouth and then picked up pressure, you'll go, oh, that's not very nice, So I want to know when the horse is uncomfortable with that, because that is part of my negative reinforcement. What happens and what you see really quickly, and I'm starting a horse now, and a couple of weeks ago on the long lines, for example, I'd pick up to get him to turn. He wanted to veer back to his friends on the long lines. We'd get to a certain part of the circle, he'd be trotting this way, and I'd pick up on that inside rein, and he'd open his mouth, but he'd come around eventually. And now I just need to look like I'm about to pick up on the inside rein, and he trots around and he doesn't open his mouth at all. So he's got completely habituated to that. Like, he's learned that pattern. He knows now when he's on the lines that if he holds his line, I won't pick up pressure on his mouth. But I needed to know that. I needed to know when he felt that was too much pressure and how he was feeling about that. And had I clamped his mouth closed, I wouldn't have been able to answer those questions. So for me, it's very important that I know how the horse is feeling, because they are all different in how responsive they are to pressure as well. So some horses, I find quarter horses, they're so, nice, aren't they, quarter horses? And they'll put up with so much. They're just such darlings. You can see why they get a hard time quite often. And, you can pick up quite a lot of pressure on a quarter horse and just go, yeah, maybe I'll respond. Whereas, you do the same thing to a Frisian. He goes, what? What was that? What was that? I'll do something. What should I do? What should I do? And so you need to know those differences, because with one horse, you might need 2 newtons of pressure. And with his next door neighbor, you might need 10 newtons of pressure. And I want to know how much, because I'm always aiming to use less and less and less. So another reason that your horse might open its mouth, let's say you don't use a noseband, another reason might be if you've got an older horse, if perhaps your cues aren't very good, or perhaps your use of negative reinforcement isn't very good. So it's possible that you're not releasing when you should. It's possible you're holding too much pressure and the horse is uncomfortable with that. And so it's worth knowing that. It's worth being able to see that the horse is uncomfortable with that. By seeing that the horse has an open mouth, that's a very good indication that your horse is uncomfortable. And then you can do something about it. But if the mouth is clamped closed, you don't know that, and so you can't do anything about it. And so the logical end to that sequence is you're going to require more and more contact or pressure in those reins to get the same result as you did before. Whereas if you don't have the noseband, you can see how the horse is responding. You can work your way to less and less of that rein tension. The other reason your horse might open its mouth when you're riding, and let's say, you've got a well-established horse that's going well, might be that your horse has left that bubble of communication. And so perhaps something really scary has happened and the horse has put its head up and go, oh, look at that thing over there, that's really scary. And you've picked up pressure on the reins, or one rein or both reins, to try and get the horse back, and the horse has opened its mouth, says, oh, I don't like that. And again, these things happen. It's worth knowing. So I want you to think a little bit about these nosebands and what exactly must the horse be going through. And just sitting here, you'll be sitting here watching this, your face is probably quite relaxed, because I think one of the biggest things about tight nosebands is that they cause tension. And if they cause tension in the jaw of the horse, that is eventually going to travel all the way down to the horse's tail. So you're going to have a tense horse from the tip of its nose to the tip of its tail. And there's no way around that. A really interesting thing that I've found that I didn't sort of think was even possible, how tight these nosebands are being done up. And I know today if you buy a bridle with a crank noseband on it, which is what they call the ones that have a lever, so the noseband, they're usually beautifully padded, they're all nice and soft, so pretty. And they have a long strap which gets put through a D-ring and then back and then done up with one buckle. So it has a lever on it, so it actually can make it even tighter than your standard sort of cavesson noseband. You can't go nearly as tight. And it is all beautifully padded. So a lot of people say, oh, yes, but it's all soft and it's padded, so it doesn't hurt the horse. Well, actually, they've found that the padding enables them to make them tighter. So all the padding does is just make it a bit tighter. But when you think about it, if you did that to yourself, like you talk about, and you strapped yourself up, I mean, just imagine that, right? When you're sitting here listening to this and your mouth is closed, your teeth aren't actually touching, right? When you're relaxed, your teeth aren't touching. We don't sit like that with our teeth clenched closed. When you put a tight noseband on a horse, that's exactly what you do. What they're doing is they're stopping the mouth from moving at all. Now, if you can imagine that, and if you can't imagine that, I suggest you get yourself a belt and tie it around your head for 5 minutes, and you will see that the only thing you can concentrate on is the thing that's clamping your mouth closed. It is quite amazing, and it will make you terribly tense. And what you're going to want to do is open your mouth. I mean, it's human nature. So in the experiment that I was a part of as well, we looked at all those oral movements that the horse usually makes. So licking and chewing and opening its mouth and swallowing and yawning. All these things that the horse usually does. And then we tightened the nosebands up and we took a note of those behaviours as well. And pretty much all of them stopped. A lot of horses completely stopped swallowing, which was really quite scary, because if you come back to the dressage thing, where yes, they lose marks if the horse opens its mouth, but the horse is also said to be on the bit or on the bridle or accepting of the bit if the horse is sort of foaming at the mouth and slobbering at the mouth. Well, if the horse can't swallow and it's got 50 newtons of pressure in each rein and its jaw is clamped closed, if it can't swallow its saliva, it is going to come out its mouth. So to be rewarding that in addition to everything else is really a problem. So anyway, that's one example, I think, of how using tack as a shortcut to training is really bad in the long run for your horse, probably in the short run as well. There's numerous other examples. We might discuss a couple of them in other weeks, but if you have one in particular that you'd like to talk about, leave me a comment below and I'll get on. We'll have a chat about that and discuss why it doesn't work and what you can do instead, which is listen to your horse probably, or train your horse. And yeah, I will get onto that next time. Anyway, tomorrow is Throwback Thursday, and I look forward to seeing you then. Bye now.